the whole sermon. Don't say that I will depart tomorrow. Even today, I am still arriving. Look deeply. Every second I am arriving to be a bud on a spring branch, to be a tiny bird with still fragile wings, learning to sing in my new nest, to be a caterpillar in the heart of a flower, to be a jewel hiding itself in a stone. I still arrive in order to laugh and to cry, to fear and to hope. The rhythm of my heart is the birth and death of all that is alive. I am a mayfly metamorphosing on the surface of the river, and I am the bird that swoops down to swallow the mayfly. I am a frog swimming happily in the clear water of a pond, and I am the grass snake that silently feeds itself on the frog. I am the child in Uganda, all skin and bones, my legs as thin as bamboo sticks. And I am the arms merchant selling deadly weapons to Uganda. I am the 12-year-old girl, refugee on a small boat, who throws herself into the ocean after being raped by a sea pirate. And I am also the pirate, my heart not yet capable of seeing and loving. I'm a member of the Politburo with plenty of power in my hands. And I am the man who has to pay his debt of blood to my people, dying slowly in a forced labor camp. My joy is like spring, so warm it makes flowers bloom all over the earth. My pain is like a river of tears, so vast it fills the four oceans. Please call me by my true names, so I can hear all my cries and laughter at once, so I can see that my joy and pain are one. Please call me by my true name so I can wake up and the door of my heart could be left open, the door of compassion. I am a circle, I am healing you. You are a circle, you are healing me. Unite us, make us one. Unite us, make us one. I recently came across that Thich Nhat Hanh poem again after not thought about it for a few years. When I was reminded of, I saw something online about his 94th birthday, I immediately went to check the poem out because it's been one of my favorite poems going back at least 25 years and a good reminder, I think, of what's most important. I don't know about you, but I probably could guess, but I'm struggling with the state of the world. And right now I'm particularly feeling a lot of tension and fear over the Supreme Court, changes that could throw back healthcare and protections from corporate power and voting rights and women's rights and LGBTQ rights back for decades. And I worry that every meaningful change we might make be able to legislate over the next 20 to 30 years will get torn down by this court, not to mention the progress that we've always made that's now at risk. And it's hard for me to not be at least a little despondent, or the alternative, get really, really angry. Neither extreme feels particularly healthy or sustainable. Both feelings, especially a strong, steady feeling of anger, feel like they have the capacity to overwhelm me. Truth is, I'm afraid. I'm afraid for our country. I'm afraid for people of color. I'm afraid for poor people. I'm afraid for women and LGBTQ people. I'm afraid for any of us who hold liberal ideals and seek a more compassionate, equitable, sustainable existence. And maybe some of you share those fears too. This current turn of our nation has stirred a bit of a crisis of faith for me, not just in the last few months, but over the last several years. And it's been forcing me, I think, to change my beliefs that have grounded me for decades. And I'm not sure I'm quite ready for those changes. A large part of my belief system is built on what Unitarian exemplar and theologian James Luther Adams calls the fifth smooth stone of religious liberalism. JLA says, liberalism holds that the resources divine and human that are available for the achievement of meaningful change justify an attitude of ultimate optimism. Ultimate optimism. Another way to express it, Catholic mystic Julian of Norwich says, all shall be well. All shall be well. Every manner of thing shall be well. And I find myself asking, will it? Is that true? I think of in times of despair and discouragement, hope is a natural, positive response to what's in front of us. But I find myself wondering and struggling with that hope. In Spanish, to hope is expressed with the verb esperar, which means to wait for. It's an expectation. It's a longing for what is not there. It's defying another value we often espouse, to accept the here and now. And I've noticed that I've attached my own emotional well-being to the actions and choices of others. In my desire to change the world and my fears of what might come, I've lost some of my connection to myself by focusing so heavily on what others are doing. And I'm realizing it's hard, very hard for me to separate myself from that attachment. Attachment has drawn me away from being my best self. It has drawn me away from the one person I can control. Islamic Sufi poet Rumi says, yesterday I was clever, so I wanted to change the world. Today I am wise, so I am changing myself. I am not in any way suggesting we should stop fighting for love and justice in our world. We can't. But I am suggesting that in the absence of being in control of what's happening, perhaps we need to think differently about how. Certainly, I feel like I do. When I've engaged the experience of hope lately, I found it in those exemplars of love throughout our history, especially those of more recent times, who I find a bit easier to connect with, like MLK and Gandhi and Dorothy Day and Thich Nhat Hanh, people who have embodied love in their very being. And I've mentioned that some of my struggles have related to a breaking of my sense of hope for the world, but really it's more a struggle about the nature of humanity. Much of my belief system is built on the premise that humanity is basically good. And yet it's hard to maintain such a belief in the face of, say, white supremacy or the massive greed of some of America's wealthiest people, or the corruption of some of our elected officials. And yet there are these souls who have shown us a different way. They have testified to love and justice through their very existence. And that, if anything, is what gives me hope. That you and I have it within our capacity to be like them. And perhaps that's the most impactful thing we can do to create change, become a light for others. Some years ago, I was reading a book by Leif Enger called Peace Like a River. At one point in the book, a young boy, dies rather tragically. And the boy then finds himself in another land, an afterlife. There's a gentle river running by, an orchard full of fruit trees. And as I read, I wondered what the boy must have felt like suddenly in a strange place, alone and separated from his family. I imagined he was frightened, anxious, nervous. In the story, the boy speaks of an awareness of a keeper of the orchard. And I imagined a person, a stranger, emerge from the trees of the orchard and approach the boy. I wonder what kind of person, what kind of being this would have to be. A complete stranger to the boy, yet whose purpose was to console him in his fear. I felt the boy find comfort and calmness as he naturally reached out to embrace this angelic stranger, feeling the safety and wholeness of home in the arms of this warm soul. And I sat down and I began I set the book down and I began to imagine what I would have to be like to greet such a child. For that child or any person to find love and hope and peace in my own simple presence. And it occurs to me that's what we're after, that's the best we have to offer our hurting, suffering, struggling world, that there is no greater gift, no greater hope than we can give the world than to become a beacon of light and love. All of us have been that child in our own way, stranger in a strange land. And all of us have been that keeper. As I look at the great exemplars of history and all the great mentors of my life, all of them had some kind of spiritual grounding that fortifies their engagement with the world. Now, spirit as a word positions itself as opposite of body, and it's easy to think of spirituality as being something that is about somewhere else, getting somewhere else, being prepared for somewhere else. It suggests something otherworldly, or can. But forgiving the frailties of the word is it's probably the best we've got to describe what we're trying to describe here. Perhaps spirituality at its most valuable is about the here and now. And I took a class in seminary called Spiritual Ground for World Engagement, the same name of the title of the sermon, Spiritual Ground for World Engagement. And then I took the class from one of those exemplars in my life, one of those spiritual exemplars, one of those people, those ethical, moral exemplars in my life, Joanna Macy. And some of you may know her writings. And by far, her class was the most impactful I took at seminary. The entire premise of the class was, how do we spiritually ground ourselves? How do we prepare ourselves, fortify ourselves, nourish ourselves, heal ourselves, so that we can engage the world for the good? Her central idea was that many of us are struggling in these times because of our capacity for empathy and connection. That we actually feel harm around us, and that this harm can be overwhelming. It can lead to despair and numbness. We struggle because we're empathetic, because we care, because we're feeling, because we're connected. Joanna Macy, she talked a lot about the phenomenon of apathy. She talked about apathy and, the question of why people might show the appearance of apathy. And she basically didn't believe in apathy, or she at least didn't believe that apathy was from a lack of caring, but rather a product of overwhelm, of feeling more than we know what to do with. that numbness that can sometimes be described as apathy is in fact actually a coping mechanism to our experience of pain related to our connection with the world. That connection is what Thich Nhat Hanh speaks about in that beautiful poem of his. The rhythm of my heart is the birth and death of all that is alive. I am a mayflower metamorphosing on the surface of the river, and I am the bird that swoops down to swallow the mayfly. I am the 12-year-old girl, refugee on a small boat who throws herself into the ocean after being raped by a sea pirate. And I am also the pirate, my heart yet not capable of seeing and loving. My joy is like spring, so warm it makes flowers bloom all over the earth. My pain is like a river of tears, so vast it fills the four oceans. Please call me by my true name so I can hear all my cries and laughter at once, so I can see that my joy and pain are one. Please call me by my true name so I can wake up, and the door of my heart could be left open, the door of compassion. There is something transformative by being present to all that is, something healing and holy, soulful and sanctifying. For me, the ground of spirituality is connection. It could be connection to God, connection to each other, connection to all that is, but connection, the experience of connection, the act of connecting, opening the doors of our hearts, the door of compassion. And I've kind of missed this. I've let much of this truth slip away in the busyness of my work and activism in the community. I've let worry and fear and anger take hold and dominate my life. And yet that connection is never gone. This morning, I actually took a moment to follow Thich Nhat Hanh's advice. And I tried to imagine myself as our president. And my first response was pretty strong revulsion. It was difficult. But as I sat there, some of the sting started to fade away. And I was able to hold that awareness and hold myself in that space with compassion. And of course, in doing so, I realized something very true. I'm the only one harmed by this pushing away, this anger, this fear, that my choice to distance harms no one but me and those who might be influenced by me as a person who is angry and fearful when I am those things. When I sit down to practice meditation, this is my practice, a practice of the open heart. If hope is built on anything, it's built on our capacity to love, here and now, through it all. The greatest have shown us the way. May it be so. Shalom, amen, and blessed be.